Good day, everybody. This is Glenn Stewart, Gulf War veteran, and I'm here with another Gulf War veteran from the first Gulf War. His name is Fernando Tatito Delgado. Hello, Fernando.
Hey, how you doing, Glenn?
Hanging in there. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What unit were you with, and do you remember what time frames you served during the first Gulf War?
Pretty much, I was with the 101st Airborne, with the 3rd of the 187th Infantry, and basically we went mid-August until about end of April of the following year.
While you were over there, what are some of your experiences over there? Do you recall any of the chemical alarms, Scud missiles? Give me a little bit of a background.
Oh, absolutely. There was actually several occasions where I can look back as best that I can and remember experiences with the M8 chemical alarm. As a matter of fact, I was in charge of the M8 chemical alarm for my platoon, and I was basically had the task of setting it up anytime that we went out into different positions, different areas that we went to. We had one incident that I can recall where we were getting ready to do the offensive, the ground offensive. We were in a staging area, and we actually had an explosion that was overhead. The explosion was actually probably several miles. I would probably say 2 to 3 miles to my best estimation. Overhead, at that time, our chemical NCO for the company directed everybody to basically don their mop suit, their mop gear, the mask. In the process of doing this, after we tore open the packages and everything, we were directed by the higher up at that time to stand down. To not go ahead and put those suits on.
Once the event was over, were reports sent to the, to the higher command?
As far as reports up to the higher, at that time, I was only a corporal, so it was a little bit beyond my position to know whether or not any reports were submitted or anything was sent through the higher up. I do remember on some of the defensive positions that we had taken after I had deployed the M8 chemical alarm, there were instances where the alarm would just keep going off repeatedly. I would go out and I would reset the alarm. At that time, I was told that because of the fine dust, the sand particles, that they were interfering with that M8 chemical alarm, to basically ignore the alarm, do the best that I can to clean the filter in that alarm, and then reset the alarm. And that happened on numerous occasions.
See, that was very similar to what they told us. The alarms were going off, and the reports come back that they were false alarms. The excuse was that the fine sand basically was kind of like baby powder. That's how thin that sand was in the desert, and that stuff was causing the false alarms. That's the exact same thing that they were telling us.
Correct. Yeah, the big thing that they told us was that it was not unusual in that climate or that environment for the M8 alarm to malfunction due to the particles of sand, the particles of dust. The reasoning behind that was, I was told at that time, and so were several other of my peers, that the fine particles would block the filtration in those M8 chemical alarms. The only directive that I got was, if the alarm went off, was to go ahead and just do my best to manipulate it to a fashion by cleaning the filter or whatever to get it back up. But unfortunately, shortly after doing everything that I was asked to do, wasn't but a short while later that the alarm would then go off again.
See, that's the thing, is we had the M8 alarms. This is a piece of equipment that was supposed to be protecting us, but yet we were being told to basically ignore it because it was defective. So, I was like, okay, well, can you give me a couple of canaries then? Maybe we can haul some canaries out there and see if, they kill over.
Yeah, it was, thinking back, I've always kind of been an antagonistic person, even growing up. Antagonistic to the point where I always asked probably too many questions. And I did ask on several occasions while this was going on with the M8 chemical alarm, if that was the case, then why do we even bother setting them them up, because if we don't know, if in fact sand particles or any other particles are interfering with the use of it, then in my opinion, it's a useless piece of equipment, and why even bother going through the process of putting it out?
Once you were over there and everything started hitting, the groundwater started hitting and all that, did you start coming down with any kind of health problem?
Not immediately. We deployed, like I said, in August of that year. We returned in April, mid-April, towards the end of April of the following year. I have reviewed my medical records, and just the following month, which would have been the month of May, I was already going on sick call for some of the things that have been listed now as presumptive conditions from the Gulf War. For example, headaches, nosebleeds, any type of sinus breathing problems, muscle fatigue, sleep disturbance. Pretty much a month after we got back, I was already going to sick call for these symptoms.
Pretty much sounds like the same as my story. I mean, it was almost, I would say, approximately 2 months upon returning. I was a individual that was in very good health. Every time I took my PT test, every single time I almost maxed out my PT score. And then all of a sudden, when I came back, was having a real hard time, getting to that level. Yeah, I started thinking, like, what the heck is going on? I used to be able to knock out X amount of push-ups, and now here I am, I'm struggling,
Correct. Yeah, I noticed shortly after getting back any type of physical exertion, whether it was doing a PT test or even doing road marches, that I struggled more than I did before deployment. Pretty much before deployment, I feel that I was in the best shape of my life. After deployment, gradually I started noticing the changes physically, mentally, and psychologically, that just something wasn't right. But unfortunately, whenever I spoke up, I was either cut short from what I had to say, or when I did say what I had to say, I was pretty much belittled in a way where I just felt that maybe I just needed to keep my mouth shut and not say anything at that point.
Yeah, and that was a big fear with a lot of other soldiers on active duty, including myself. I remember, several soldiers complaining about health problems, and I had a full PGI examination done, because I had heard so many soldiers complaining of different things like muscle and joint pain, their headaches, etc. And, I saw the article in the Army Times, and I thought to myself, okay, let me go to get myself checked out, because, what these guys are talking about, it really sounds like what I'm going through. So I had a PGI at the time. It was called the Pacific Gulf Illness Examination. And, of course, at that time, they had no idea what they were dealing with. So when I went in, they ran all kinds of blood tests and x-rays and you name it, and everything came back saying everything was normal. But, hearing what was happening to other veterans, there were some veterans that we were hearing stories that they would not shut their mouth up, and basically what they were ending up doing with them, they were disciplining them. They were pretty much told, hey, you either shut up about this or you're going to ruin your military career. So at that point, that's when, I decided, oh, okay, let me shut my mouth. I won't say anything. I'll just suck it up and keep on going the best I can. But
and like I said, that's pretty similar to the experience that I had with the remainder of the time that I had on active duty.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after I initially put a claim with the VA that all of this pretty much started coming to light, as far as the experiences that I was hearing about other veterans that were going through the same thing. It was, approximately 4 to 5 years actually after I had been deployed that really it started sinking in that something here, that there's a problem here.
Something wasn't right.
Correct, because unfortunately, with with the active duty mentality, we have this mentality where we're pretty much told to throw dirt on it or suck it up and drive on. So it was a very difficult situation while on active duty to go ahead and bring up these concerns because, of course, going on sick call, you didn't want to go to sick call because, of course, you're made to feel like you're a slug and you're kind of trying to ride a profile, and in fact, that was not the case.
Exactly. It was like, you would go on sick call, and it was like, oh, you're just trying to get a profile so your lazy butt can just sit around the barracks, you got to get it, whatever. Yeah, that was the mentality. It was, it was pretty much shut your mouth, suck it up, and, get your butt in gear.
Exactly.
So, over the years, your health has gotten worse, correct?
Yes. Absolutely, it has.
So, as of right now, are you able to work right now?
I'm at this moment right now. I do have a job, and I am actively working. It is difficult though because my job is very physical. But like I said, there's no other way at this point that I can, provide for myself and my family.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I went through. I tried to stay on my job as long as possible. And, I had a job as a network engineer, sitting down on my butt in front of a computer all day. However, my body couldn't take that. My mind was giving out on me. Just sitting there on the desk was painful as hell, And,
yes.
Yeah, it came to a point I went to my manager and I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to, I tried to stay as long as possible, but I'm going to have to volunteer. If they have layoffs or anything like that, I'm going to need to put my name in to, volunteer for it. So this way at least I had some kind of a package getting out as opposed to just quitting, Talking about your health, okay, like, with me, it took me, I would have to say, I did not realize that I was suffering from Gull War illness until around the end of 2010 towards 2011. When did you realize that you were actually suffering from Gull War illness?
Well, to actually determine, I guess at this point, to say that I was suffering from Gull War illness, I did not realize what I was suffering from. I couldn't put a name on it. I do know at this point with the research and the things that have come out to the public now and things that I've been made aware of now that quite possibly, yes, this is what I'm suffering from. I started noticing, like I said, changes to my physical, mental, and psychological well-being probably within a year after returning from the Gulf War.
Yeah.
I did do active duty until 1995, so I did an additional 4 years, and I put in a claim, like I said, with the VA in 1996, and pretty much started the road down to, with the VA. I started that road back in 1996. I could say now that with everything that I've read and everything that's been, brought forth through different agencies and different programs, that yes, I could honestly say now that a lot of the symptoms are Gulf War related.
Have you submitted any claims with the VA, and what's the status on those?
The initial claim for what I was suffering at the beginning, the initial claim that I put in was back in 1996. The sleep disturbances and any other thing that now is connected, or you could say is related to what we call Gulf War syndrome, I did that back in 1996. The unfortunate part about it, come to find out now recently within the last 6 months after reviewing all of my records, was that all of these claims were at one time deferred. They were not denied immediately, they were actually deferred. But the unfortunate part about it was I was only going through the VA system for medical treatment because I did not have private insurance. Nobody told me that I needed to do further studies and submit the findings of those studies, and apparently they deferred it for 3 years until 1999, and then in 1999 they sent out a letter denying me the claim.
So basically, during that time period, I mean, you're looking at you were kind of like with me, you know. At that time, I did not even know any other Gulf War veterans that were going through this. You know, I was pretty much alone, trying to convince my doctors and family and friends that, look, there's something wrong here. You know, there's something obviously wrong. It was really hard. I mean, even to this day, I have family, friends, and so on that, you know, won't speak with me because when I kept on going to the doctors and the results would come back and say, well, we couldn't find anything. So, of course, you know, they start assuming, okay, he's starting to turn mental on us. You know, they started looking like, well, maybe we should send you for a psych eval. And the sad part about it is, you know your body. I know, you know, I'm very conscious of what is happening to my body. What is my body telling me, you know? And I knew that, no, this is not a mental issue. When I do certain things and I can feel the extreme pain, that's not a psychosomatic problem. It's not a mental condition, you know. And trying to convince people of this was just a uphill battle. Currently, you have your claims with the VA, and they are in appeal status, correct?
No, not at this time. I actually opened up a new claim, actually not too long ago. I'm in the process now of gathering up the appropriate information. I have private insurance at this time, and I have those private doctors working with me very well. I couldn't be any happier with private doctors in gathering the information that I need in order to turn it into VA.
That's good to hear. Have you experienced, I've heard from a couple of other veterans where the Veterans Administration has lost any of their claims, records, NODs, appeals, etc. Have you experienced any of that?
No, not at this time. I have not had any problems as far as submitting. But like I said, the submission or the paperwork that I'm submitting at this time is only going to be the second time that I've submitted anything to the VA.
Mostly because, you know, like most of us going through this, we weren't, you know, a lot of time was wasted on the fact that we had no idea what we were dealing with.
Correct.
You know, when you talk about...
Like I said earlier, it's unfortunate because we have that mentality. I was in the infantry, and, you know, the mentality was that you do what you have to do in order to accomplish the mission. It didn't matter what condition your body was in. It didn't matter, you know, what your mind was in. The objective had to be met, and you did it without question, and you moved on, and you did what you had to do. And I think a lot of that has, unfortunately, on some occasions, has kind of filtered over into the civilian world for me, and it's gotten to the point now where I think I've given everything that I've got, and I just don't have any more to give. And it's now that, you know, now is the time that I look back and say, you know, maybe I should have said this, or maybe I should have done that. But at that point, like I said, you know, when you did say something, like my initial physical with the VA back in '96, everything that I mentioned to any of those doctors pertaining to anything with sleep disturbance or anything, it was avoided, or it was pushed aside, or I was point blank told to my face, no, there's no way that that this is going on with you.
As a matter of fact,
your hands, you know, you feel like your hands are tied. You feel like your hands are tied, and you reach out to people, and you're expecting help, and whatever it is that you might need, and you just feel like, you know, at the end of it, they get you.
You feel like they're just slapping your hand away, saying, just get away from me.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, are you married?
Yes, I am.
And married, kids full grown or still in the house?
No, all of my kids are full grown. I've actually been married several times since I got back from the Gulf War.
Now, have you experienced with family members and friends and doctors, have you experienced any of that? Like, I'll give you an example. Just recently, I went to the ER room at the VA hospital because I was having an episode, a flare-up, and I had the doctor at the VA. You know, I kind of gave him my background, what was going on and so on, the health problems that I have, and, you know, kind of look at that. And I had the VA doctor actually tell me that there's no such thing as Gulf War syndrome. And I bit my tongue, tried not to laugh, right? You know, because doing what I do, everything I have researched, everything I have read, and so on, I can honestly tell you that I know a heck of a lot more than most of these doctors, PhDs. You know, just because a doctor, one thing I'm going to tell a lot of people is just because a doctor has a title, has a degree, does not mean they are all of a sudden a god, or, you know, it doesn't make them a god. It doesn't make them a know-it-all. Because if you look at it this way, you take, for example, you go to your civilian family doctor, right? He's a family practitioner. Now, let's say you're having a neurological issue, right? He's not going to be able to treat that, correct? So what do? They do a referral. Any kind of problem out of their realm of knowledge, they're going to refer you to a specialist. Why? Because the specialist has more knowledge in that specific area.
Correct.
So this doctor had the nerve to say that there was no such thing as Gull War Illness. I almost started laughing. I started to educate him on the matters of the research that was conducted by Georgetown University, University of Texas. I gave him several reference points, and he tried to argue with me. And, you know, he was like, well, I'm going to submit you a request for a side valve. That's when I started laughing. I said, you know what? I don't care. Go ahead. Because I can tell you right now, I'm so used to it. You know, I'm so used to that, getting that, hearing it, and getting that attitude from family, friends, coworkers, etc. Even doctors give me the cross eye, like, yeah, you're just mental.
Right.
But have you experienced that yourself?
I do know that I was referred to go see a psychiatrist at one time, and we had several sessions. Nothing came of it as far as anything showing that there was anything wrong with me, other than the fact that he did mention that I had signs and symptoms of PTSD. And basically the neurologist that was working with me, her idea or her ideal treatment for me was to just give me antidepressants. Nortriptyline was a big one that they gave me all the time, and some other ones that I have listed. But basically, you know, I'd go in and I would complain, and I would tell them, you know, I'm feeling this or I'm feeling that, and it was like, okay, well, here's a prescription. Here's another prescription.
Yeah.
Basically, the only thing that they did in order to, I guess, in a way, shut me up, because I guess they could do at that point.
Yeah, the attitude is pretty much dump them up, shut them up. You know, if we can keep them in a state of zombieism, you know, then we've done our job. And that was, you know, that was what they were doing to me. You know, I was on so many medications that pretty much non-functional. You know, and I thought to myself, they have me on narcotics also, right, trying to dull the pain and so on. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to, what's the point of living my life if I'm already dead. Mentally, basically, I'm a walking zombie. What's the point of continue on living if I'm going to live this way? So I turned around and I cleansed out my system. I stopped taking all my medications, and that's when I said, okay, I'm going to take control of this, and I'm going to show the doctors what does work for me, how it works for me, and what does not. If it does not work for me, then I'm not taking it. For example, gabapentin, they had me on gabapentin, and guess what? It did nothing for me. So I told my doctors, you know what? It might work for other veterans and so on, but it's not doing anything for me. So therefore, no, I'm not taking it.
Quite frankly, that was my statement after about 2 years of constantly taking nortriptyline. They also had me for any physical pain. They had me on tramadol. They had me on hydrocodone. And quite frankly, it just got to the point where I was taking the pills to take them because I felt like they were not doing anything for me. I don't know if my body just built a resistance to these medications, but it just got to the point where I was just taking them to take them.
Exactly.
They weren't doing anything for me.
Exactly, and your body builds up. The one thing, when I was on morphine, I can tell you, it's addictive, and your body builds up to it. So your body starts getting used to that, and then you start feeling the pain more. So now you're having to say, okay, well, now I need to increase the dosage so that I don't feel the pain. Well, that's not going to work for you. You know, that's not going to do anything for you because next thing you know, you're taking a dose that's meant to numb an elephant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's when I turned around and said, you know what, from this point on, I will suck it up. I will take the pain. I would do the best I can, but I'm going to go with what works for me, balance it out. And I did that. I went through each medication one at a time. You know, for example, the venlafaxine, they had me on X amount of pills per day. And what I did is I said I took one, I would take one in the morning and so forth. I realized, okay, that's not cutting it. Let me cut the dose and spread them throughout the day and so forth. And finally I figured out, okay, here's my balance base, here's my baseline. This is what works for me. And I annotated that on a spreadsheet. Then I would go, you know, about 3 to 4 days or so on. I would say about 4 or 5 days. Then I would take and go through the second prescription and, you know, work my way down the line. The ones that did not do anything for me, I would scratch them out and say, you know what, I'm not doing those anymore. They're not helping me. What's the point, you know, what's the point in taking something that is not doing anything at all?
Correct.
Now, one thing, you suffer from IBS?
Yes, I do.
The one thing, you know, talking to other veterans that go through that, like myself, one thing that has really helped me is, I mean, I still suffer it, but I have it in much better control than in the past, and that's keeping a diet diary. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No, I have not.
Okay. What I did, trying to figure out, there's certain things that like act as catalysts, like a trigger mechanism. What I would do is every time I would get like a flare-up where I would start bloating up and, you know, I felt horrible. What I would do is annotate, okay, what did I drink? What happened the night or the day before that triggered this? And I started writing them down. And then I would go through and reenact it to see if I got the same effect. And sure enough, I was able to pinpoint several things. You know, for example, one of the things with me, milk products, I love to drink milk. I can't do it anymore. And I never had a problem with it. I mean, it's not that I'm lactose intolerant. It's that if I do drink it, I mean, every now and then I'll have like half a glass or whatever. But if I go beyond that, then I'm going to run into the bloating and feeling like crap.
Sure.
Sugar products, sodas. I told veterans that are suffering from IBS, get away from processed foods. You have to get away from that. Chips, anything like that.
Yeah.
Chips, sodas, anything like that. Candy, sugar. Sugar is horrible for you. So what I've been doing is I switch more to the natural foods, fruits, vegetables. Instead of eating the candy bar, I'll go for stuff like grapes, blueberries, and things like that.
Sure. Yeah, I know I have not specifically kept a diary, but I am very aware of foods that just don't agree with me, specifically any type of tomato-based food, anything that's acidic like that. Milk. I still can tolerate milk, but I cannot tolerate whole milk. It has to be basically fat-free milk. So you typically a white opaque liquid. It's really no texture to it or anything. And like the ham or bologna or anything like that, I can't do any of that stuff anymore. I grew up on fried bologna sandwiches, and unfortunately, at this age and what's going on with me, I can't enjoy that anymore.
Now, one thing you might want to, do you take probiotics?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are you taking the high count, like the 30 billion count?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Because that definitely has helped with, keeping mine under wraps in a more tolerable stage. I mean, I still get my flare-ups and all that, but, it's not as severe as it was before, One thing I tell veterans, one thing I have noticed is I started a supplement of CoQ10, and I've been on this for about 2.5 weeks, and I can tell you it has definitely made a difference in how I've been able to carry on. It's not the magic pill, it's not the cure, but it has buffered the intensity level of the flare-ups. So,
I myself started taking, I actually take the higher concentration, which is known as ubiquinol.
That's what I take.
Yeah, I actually read something somewhere on a veteran website that they were starting to use this for GWI veterans, and I actually went out and bought some not too long ago, and I've been using it every day. So I'm right there with you with that.
Yeah.
It does help to a point. I also had an extensive blood work done recently with my primary care provider, and anything that I was deficient on, I make up for that with supplements, to include vitamin D, the ubiquinol, and other supplements that I take. I take, fish oil tablets and all sorts of things.
Correct.
So I'm pushing about 15 to 20 different supplements a day.
And see, that's another thing that I keep on hearing over and over from all the Gulf War veterans I speak with, is the deficiency in our vitamin D. Our autoimmune system is shot. Our cells are, practically the microplasma of our cells they're shot, so we're having to take these supplements like CoQ10 and vitamin D to make up for the deficiency.
Right.
And if you notice, one thing, speaking with a lot of Gulf War veterans, one thing that comes up all the time is, we always get sick very easy. Our immune system's shot. We get sick all the time. We're constantly running like low-grade fevers. It's like having a mild flu,
Yes.
And it happens, I know, from my own experience, I know I at times go through periods, we're talking about, 2 or 3 months, where I would run a low grade. I would, sure enough, I felt kind of hot or whatever, and I would take the thermometer and put it in there, and sure enough, I was running a low temperature. Not a full-blown out fever, but it was a low temperature. Like a low fever.
Yes.
And
yes, I have the same experience.
Exactly. See, that's if you run.
I have the same thing, and
exactly. If you run a low grade.
Same thing, and then I pretty much have the same thing. And another thing that I notice is constantly, and my wife actually jokes with me, to a point where it seems like I'm constantly perspiring. Constantly perspiring.
Yeah, it sounds like me. I remember coming back, and once I got back, it was my, of course, we all sweat. I get out there in the past and doing yard work and whatever. I was like, holy smokes. I mean, just sweating like crazy. I mean, even during, I would have to put a fan on there and the air conditioner blast it full blast, because it was like, holy crap, geez, I'm sweating like Niagara Falls here.
Yeah, even now, I live in northern Illinois, and even during the winter, I have to have a fan on high. If I could run the air conditioner during the winter, I would probably do that too, because I have a really hard time, my body, it seems, has a really hard time regulating temperature. If I put a big blanket on during the winter, I have to kick it off, because I feel like I'm suffocating. But then I kick the big blanket off, I get a thinner blanket, and then I'm still too cold. There is no happy medium.
Exactly.
Either I'm too hot or I'm too cold.
Oh, wow.
Even so now during the winter, we've fortunately not had any snowfall up here in northern Illinois yet, but it's cool at night, and my wife is bundled up, and I'm laying next to her pretty much, in my skivvies with the fan blowing on me, and she's freezing, and I'm sitting there sweating, and I'm not moving, I'm not doing anything. I'm just laying there.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get some sleep.
Well, it's good to know I'm not the only one going through that, because, I can recall many times over, I'm sitting down watching TV, and I'm just constantly messing with the thermostat. I would go over there and like, oh, geez, I'm freezing. So I would turn it up like 1 or 2 degrees, and next thing you know, I'm running back over there like, oh, it's freaking hot in here.
Yeah, you can't tolerate it.
And it's like constantly up and down, like, I'm cold, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm hot, It's like, okay, can we find a mid-ground?
I've actually had coworkers, because I work in the private security sector. I'm an armed security officer, and we patrol the facility that I work at and everything. And I've had coworkers walk up to me after, going around and patrolling the different areas, and come up to me and ask me, are you doing okay? And I'm like, yeah, why? And they're like, Jesus, you're sweating like you just got done running a marathon. And I may not have walked, but maybe 200 yards altogether.
Yeah, I remember, when I was living in an apartment complex, some of my friends and family coming over to the apartment, and I would have it so cold in there that even in the wintertime, these people would come visit me, like, their reactions like, geez, it is freezing in here. And they would actually leave their coats on like, have you lost your mind? It's almost as cold in here as it is outside. And that was in the wintertime.
My kids, when they were still at home, they would walk into the bedroom, and they would nickname my bedroom the refrigerator, because that's basically what it was. I had to keep it as low as possible, or I just did not feel comfortable, especially when I tried to get the little bit of sleep that I could get.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything. Is there anything you want to talk about? Anything we might have missed?
Well, the only thing that comes to mind at this point, Glenn, is the fact that back in the mid-2000s, when I was dealing with the VA on a few occasions in between jobs where I didn't have insurance, I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, and even now, the connection with sleep apnea and any type of illness that may be connected with the Gulf War it's almost like a taboo thing to bring up to the doctors, because most of them don't consider the sleep apnea to be affiliated with any other type of condition. Unfortunately for me, I've gained quite a bit of weight after leaving the military, and it's not because I'm inactive. I get up and I go to work, I wake up stiff, and it takes me an hour or two to actually get moving and get going. But I do get going, and I do get moving eventually. But the unfortunate part about it is that, like I said, it comes down to the point where the sleep apnea was diagnosed through the VA, and unfortunately the VA looks at it, and they look at me and they go, well, the reason that you have the sleep apnea
is because
you have the sleep disturbances is because you are what we consider to be obese.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing. See, I'm going to blow that theory out of the water, right? Because, being in the military, my weight always stayed between 163 to 165. I was hardly ever. The only time I dropped below 163 is whenever I came down with the flu or something like that. I never went above 165. That's it, right there. Now, once I got out, I put on some weight and so on, and then when I started having my health issues and all this, I got up there to around close to 200. However, I turned around and I said, you know what? No, I'm not doing that. And I went on a diet, and I got it dropped down. Right now I'm at 183. Now, 183 for 5'11" is not considered obese, correct?
Correct.
Now, I've had 2 sleep studies done, and both of them came up with I suffer from sleep apnea. Okay, 183 with sleep apnea. Okay, so, they can't say, oh, well, it's because you're obese. That's just not normal.
Correct. And I agree with that, because I actually work with a couple of coworkers who are veterans themselves that are still in great shape, and 2 out of the 3 have been diagnosed with sleep apnea and are on CPAP right now. So I agree with you on that. But, it's just unfortunate, like I said, that, we bring up these concerns and how easily they can just pretty much push everything aside and just, either make it sound like you're making it up, or they make it sound like you don't know what you're talking about, or they make, it's almost like they try to manipulate you to a point where you tell them how they think that you feel, when in fact you're trying to tell them how you feel, because we deserve the medical care that's needed for the things that are going on with us. We deserve at least that much.
Now, have you noticed, one of the things I have noticed is the fact that whenever I brought this up before, but whenever I talk to a lot of Gulf War veterans, and not everyone, have you ever noticed a definite speech pattern between us?
As speech pattern in reference to
the
terminology that we use? Or?
No, I'm talking about if you talk to Gulf War veterans, right, and if you speak with them for a while, you will start to notice a lot of areas where we tend to stumble on our words and so on. It's almost like a fingerprint pattern. Some have it more distinct, some are very mild, and some of them, And it doesn't happen all the time. There's, it's not something that, if you sit there and listen to them, it's like, oh, there, da, 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 there it is.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that many, many times is, listen to the audio, listen to other veterans, and, when they talk, when I get to talking to them, I'll listen to them and like, yep.
No, there are times where I've had to stop and kind of collect my thoughts in the middle of a conversation because my brain kind of is, I guess, on slow-mo.
It's kind of like
I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's kind of like the message. What you're trying to say, it gets stuck there for a moment.
Yes.
And it has to reroute in order to convey the message.
My mouth keeps moving, but I lose complete. What I'm saying completely goes off into left field to what I'm actually thinking.
Wow.
That happens to me. There are times here where my wife swears up and down that she has told me something, sometimes a day, days before, or even at that moment. She swears up and down, which has caused moments of despair and drama at home because I swear, no, you did not tell me that. She says she did tell me that.
Yes.
Who am I to know? In the end, I just agree with her and say, well, I'm sorry. Maybe you did say that to me. I can't recall you telling me that, but if you say you did, then I guess I'm going to have to go with the fact that you did.
Exactly.
So that's happened to me. That's happened to me quite a bit. There's other times where I've woken up and I feel like I'm still dreaming, like I'm still asleep, like I'm in a cloud,
Yeah, you're like in a semi-sleep state. Normally when
like what we call deja vu. It almost feels like I'm in a deja vu state.
Exactly.
Type environment.
That's one of the things. That's one thing, and that's one thing I have. I had to struggle with is, going through that. So I had to explain to her, look, when I wake up, do not try to hold a conversation with me for at least a minimum of 5 minutes, because you're going to sit there, you could be talking about, oh, well, work called me in and I got to go over there, blah, blah. And you know what? You trying to sit there holding a conversation with me when I just woke up. The only thing I'm going to be hearing, the best I can explain it, is like, you remember the cartoon Charlie Brown? With the teacher in the background going, wow, 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 wow. That's all I hear.
Absolutely.
And so I would tell her, look.
I'm there with you.
Exactly. I would tell her, look, give me 5 minutes. Let me drink a cup of coffee. Let me get let me take the brain and kickstart this thing and get it moving like chicka, 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 and then come back to me. When I come back over to you, then I'll tell you, okay, brain's jump-started. Now let's talk. And it happens to me every single day, every single morning when I take a nap, when I wake up, or if I take a nap, when I wake out of it, it's kind of like in a half limbo state.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat. I actually just got married a couple of years ago. The woman that I married, I was married to her once before. She was actually my wife during the deployment to the Gulf War, to Desert Storm. We divorced probably a year after I got back, pretty much to put it bluntly, because she said that I was being difficult, and we were both young. I got remarried to another woman, and I have a child with that woman, but we just divorced about 4 years ago. And the cause of the divorce, basically that we had irreconcilable differences. But she did tell me that the reason that she could not, after 9 years of marriage, could not tolerate staying in my home any longer was because she just couldn't deal with the fact that we had what she considered no communication. One of the things that she brought up from that was the fact that, like I said, with my present wife now, that I've remarried after so many years, was that she would tell me things and I would act like I forgot or like I didn't care. Those were her exact words was, you know, I tell you things and then it's like you don't care, like you're not listening to me. You know, like I told her, I says, you know, I just can't recall, you know, you telling me that, or I just can't recall the appointment or, you know, whatever it might have been at that time.
Yeah.
So I will say that condition there, whatever's going on there, has, you know, not only affected me with other things, but it's affected, you know, my personal life to the point where it's affected relationships. It's become a point of frustration. It's become a point of anger, you know, because it's almost like you feel like you're losing your mind, you know?
You feel like you're losing your mind, and then you feel a lot of frustration because, you know, you feel like you're going at this alone. You know what you're experiencing. You know what you're going through. But trying to get others to understand you, you kind of feel frustrated because you feel like you're explaining yourself clearly, you know, specifically to people, but yet they're not understanding you. You know, so you almost feel like, okay, maybe I can crack your head open and try to connect the dots for you, you know. Now, have you ever been, well, I'll talk to you offside on this, about the YouTube channel, some of the videos talking on the subject matter of mental cognitive dysfunction. All right, we'll go ahead. Is there anything else you want to mention?
No, not at this time. I will say that if you would like, go ahead and keep my number. If it's okay with you, I'll keep your number. And,
Absolutely.
If I have any other questions or anything, or if you have any other questions, or if you need to speak to me about anything else, you know, by all means, give me a call. You know, I think the more people that are on board with this, and the more people that are behind this, you know, to be able to present it, get people's attention, I think the better it'll be for all of us. You know, if we continue to fight, but we continue to fight together.
Roger that. Well, hey, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay.
I want to thank you for taking the time to do the interview.
No problem.
Right now, I'm 100% impermanent, you know, and I refuse to just sit back in the back burner and say, okay, well, I got my 100%, so, you know, just everybody else figure out your own stuff. And I refuse to do that because I know what it's like to live with this crap. I know what it's like,
yeah.
And I know that there's so many other veterans that are going, you know, veterans like yourself going through this. And, you know, the general public, other veterans need to be aware, you know, they need to learn from this. The general public needs to learn about it. And, you know, basically, bottom line, we need to get the VA to say, look, enough's enough, stop it, knock it off, and let's get help to these, you know, these poor, increpid, broken down soldiers. I mean, can we get a little bit of mercy? You know, mercy, that's what we're looking for, justice. All we want is justice. And have a little compassion, a little bit of mercy on us. That's it.
Sure, absolutely. And then, you know, not to dangle a carrot in front of us by, you know, listing things, for example, on that presumptive list, and then you have people that are suffering from those presumptive conditions, and then they put in a claim, and then the claim gets denied. You know, what is the purpose of then having this presumptive list?
Exactly.
You know, it's almost like a tease there. You know, like they're teasing you.
Yes.
We'll put out this list and say, yeah, it's a possibility that this stuff, but then when you put in for it, they tell you, well, no, sorry, we feel that it's not. Well, then why have the list to begin with anyways?
Roger.
You know, why even present that?
Absolutely. All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I'll give you a call back in a moment here. But yet again, thank you for taking part in this.
Thank you for including me.